Roy Woolsey, and give you a little history. My father worked for Fanny Farmers, and he was in training to be a superintendent. And they had trouble in New York, so they sent him there. And whatever he did, he got him out of the trouble. So he says, we weren't going to go to Detroit, but he said, if you want to, you can stay here in New York. And so he picked New York. And we went there in about May of '41. And like everyone else, on December 7th, we were out bowling and heard about Pearl Harbor. And like everyone else, hardly anyone knew where Pearl Harbor was. So the next year I got in the Air Force and took up a basic training in Atlantic City, New Jersey. We lived in the hotels. Of course, we had the old Army cots instead of the fancy beds that they used to have. One time I did KP, and I was working there, and the mess sergeant came around and said, come with me, and he picked two other guys, and we went down through a manhole in the floor where it turned out to be his office, and then he pulled out the bottle that he didn't want to drink alone. I don't remember how we got out of there, but then we did our rifle practice on the beach. We had the old 1903s Springfield, shot at a 1,000-inch range, which is fairly small. So I forget how many shells we shot there, and then we tried the Tommy gun. And you aim at the target, and here, and the third one they'd go by. And then after basic training, went to Camp Kilmer, get ready to go overseas. And we left about the 10th of December, '42. And but the second day out, we got into the stream, I can't think of the name of it right now, the Gulf Stream, yeah. Those waves were so big that the ship, when it was down in the bottom, you couldn't see any others. Get on the top, and the prop, as slow as it was going, and touch the water and shake the whole ship. Another problem with the tankers, when they were on top of the wave was over the center, and it was washing some sailors off, which is kind of embarrassing. I imagine they're hard to pick up too, with about 50 ships in the convoy. And we got to Africa. Part of them went down to Casablanca, and our ship went to Oran, North Africa. And we got off the ship and walked for a while, and then they came with trucks and took us to a train station. Then we sat on the train for hours, and on board ship, you know, 2 meals. We were getting kind of hungry. We're 4 of us together, and one of them could speak French, and he talked to the kid there and said, if he could get us some bottles of beer and some fruit or something. And he had his hand out with change in it, and the kid took a nickel, bought 4 beers and 4 oranges, and had change. Their money goes by size. Then we were out in set up our tents out in the orchard. And it was dry that day, and then it rained till New Year's. Each man had a quarter of a tent, so 4 of us got together. A lot of the others, only 2 together, and then when it rained, they got kind of wet. And those tents, when it's raining, if you touch them, it's like poking a hole through them. Then we got transferred about January in '43, going to the Combat Officers Rest Camp. We took a local train, and they stopped at everything. It took us, I don't know, about 10 hours to get to Algiers. It was nighttime. They didn't have any bedrooms for us, so we put up our sleeping bags along the hallway. Next morning at breakfast, they're talking about the worst ever they'd had, and we didn't hear a thing about it. We were so tired from that all day. So then the next day we went out to the rest camp. They had civilian homes, like summer homes, from rich people in Algiers. One had 2 bars in town, and we lived in different ones. These houses, and the officers would go had a hotel about a quarter mile away, and we stayed in these rich people's homes. And my first bedroom was in the kitchen, not very much room, but then later on I got a regular room. We had civilian beds of that, so that made it real nice. One day I was looking out over the Mediterranean, and I saw this P-38 diving. I don't know how high he started up, but as he pulled off, his wings came off. The first ones didn't have dive brakes. It hit compressibility. Another time we had to do things, try out different things for the fellows when they're resting there. We were getting a boat ride. It was a French oversized rowboat. They put up a tent, or a sail on it. And we were in the harbor there, and we saw black smoke towards our place there. And when we came back, we said, "What the heck happened?" And, well, between our place and the hotel, there's about a quarter mile of beach or land. Different outfits would come and shoot target practice. And the French were there, and they had a tri-motor that they pulled a target. And the guys kept on shooting and shot their own plane down. Really embarrassing. And one time we had some 2 infantry men that came there for light duty. They had been wounded up in combat. Their story goes back several months. One fellow, a German plane went down and the prop broke, and he picked up the piece and wanted for a souvenir and see if he could make something of it. And he carried it for about 3 months, and he got tired of carrying it, so he showed some guys, and one guy took it, and he carried it for another 2 or 3 months, and then he got tired of carrying it too, and so some guys were looking at it and seeing who went on it, and the darn thing blew up. It was booby-trapped. Kind of ruined the whole day. I never did see a thermometer there. In the wintertime, we'd go on guard duty. You'd have a jacket, overcoat, sweater, and you're still cold. I had one of the fellows in there, we call him Spooky. He's a true chain smoker. We'd get 2 or 3 cigars and a carton of cigarettes, and I think all he needed was 1 match a day. He'd use up all the cigars, and then he'd go on to the cigarettes. I was on guard duty with him one time. We're walking behind the buildings, and it was open field on the one side, and we followed the path. And I turned, and he kept going straight, and it was a little bumpy, and it woke him up. He was sleepwalking. Another time, we were in the day room listening to Axacelli, and he was sitting over quite a ways from us and sitting in a chair, and we were listening, and all of a sudden he jumps up, stamps his feet. "Who gave me a hot foot? Who gave me a hot foot?" And nobody had been near him. One time there was a big rock out in the Mediterranean, and different airplanes would use that as target practice. And all the pilots knew where we were, so they'd buzz us. This one guy was so low on the beach with a Mustang, they hit the fellow's head, top of the head, and killed him, and then went over our place. It was probably noisy and bumpy that he probably never knew what happened. Then the second year, I got in with the Air Corps engineers out at Maison Blanche Airport outside of Algiers. I should go back. The rest camp was in a little town called Antea. And then airport, worked with the engineers. I was in supplies. We had 200 Italian prisoners working for us. They were so glad to be away from the fighting. They do about anything. They taught one guy how to run the bulldozer. He was having so much fun on it, he'd go all over making the diamonds for ball players. They said he was quite a strong guy. I didn't see this myself, but some Italians were trying to pick up a 55-gallon drum and put it on a truck, and they couldn't make it, so he pushed them out of the way and put it up himself. So, and then I wasn't there at the time, but someone said there's a B-17 that had 3 new engines and would give people rides, take them off. As they were taxiing out, one of the engines quit. They monkeyed around, got it going again. They took off, and about 200 feet, another one of the new ones quit. And so they had 3 going and lightweight, so they kept going. But a few miles away, the second one quit. So they had 2 going and 2 down, so they started heading back. Before they could get back, the third one went. Only the old one was going. And over there, their telephone poles with an I-beam with cement around it. They came down hitting those spinning and dropping engines. So some of the guys got banged up a little bit. As, near where we slept, there's engine test blocks. All day long it'd be quiet, and all night they'd have those darn things going. Kind of hard sleeping sometimes, but after a while you get used to it. We had one fellow from the engineers there. He was quite a drinker. He'd go on Saturday into town, bring one guy. By noon he'd bring the other guy back plastered, and then he'd take another one till supper time, bring him back plastered. And he'd go through 3 guys on each day. And you know he was drinking as much as they were or more. Then I got transferred out to Blida, which is about 50 miles southwest of Algiers, a little town. And I worked in the office there. We'd take a plane ride into Maison Blanche and then go into town with a truck. And then on the way home, we'd have to pick up another truck and shuttle us back home. And one time I missed the truck and started walking and hitching and trying to get a ride. Nobody would stop, and a British soldier was walking with me too, and nobody would stop for us. And finally, we even had a French soldier. Kept walking, nobody would stop, and the Frenchman said he knew where camp was, where we'd get something to eat. And he said, so we went over there and got something to eat, and there's a railroad station not too far away. And so we went there and figured we could get a ride. I said the train would be probably a little late, but so we slept on the benches. And then about 4 o'clock, he woke us up and said it's going to be late. So, keep us jumping there. We finally got the ride and went into town, into the where our camp was, just in time to go to work. One fellow there had a beautiful mustache. He had curl on the end and all, and he was kind of blonde haired, and he had a picture taken. He's going to send it back to his folks. It being black and white, you couldn't even see the mustache, so he cut it off. Then we, there for a while, then we went over to Naples, Italy, where that would be in 44. And we stayed in a hotel where a bomb had gone through the top floors and into the courtyard. It didn't blow up, but there's film and papers from the guy must have been a photographer or something. So there's a lot of that floating around there. We take one of those, I can't think of the name, one goes down, one up, cable cars, and go into town. Joe Louis was in town there, and I never did see him. We were there about a month, and then we went over to Bari, Italy. And then one time we were going into the movies in town, and as we were watching the movie, all of a sudden the skylight opened up, and we got up and some of the chairs were knocked down. When we got outside, we found out a ship in the harbor had blown up, and the concussion had gone down the streets. And a lot of the buildings, they had these corrugated metal doors they could close it up with. And it went around the corner, it sucked this out and this those, and it just sucked every other one, it sucked out. And found out that when the ship blew up, it blew another ship near it, and they hauled that out and were going to sink it to see if they tried to sink it anyhow. And they shot at the thing and couldn't sink the darn things, so they let it go, hoping it'd sink itself. And see, then it was getting near the end of the war, and some of our guys had been over there 3 years, and I'd been 2.5, so we're slated to go back home in May. And took us by truck down to the instep of Italy, Toronto. And when we got down there, then we found a ship was leaving sooner from Naples, so they took us in B-17s. 4 of us were in the nose of B-17 flying up to Naples. The war had just about ended there. And we went over Mount Vesuvius, and it had erupted the year before, but it was closed in, but you could see people walking up to the top of it. And we got back, there was another ship that made it to New York. They were the first ones back after the war ended there in Europe. And we went down to Newport News, Virginia. And first time in 2 years, they had milk and steaks, and so it was kind of nice to get back. And then they gave us a month off. We went home, and I went down to San Antonio, and we were down there about a month or 2, and then they sent us out to California so we get enough points to get out of the service. So I got out on November 5th, 1945. So that kind of ends the World War II stuff. I have one joke I might as well tell.
Yes, you might as well.
This fire company was washing one of their fire trucks, and as they were washing it, there's a little girl came up with a wagon that had ladders on both sides, and she had a dog and a cat there pulling it. And he came out and admired how nice she had a rig she had, and then he noticed that the dog was tied up by the collar, but the cat was tied up by the testicles. And he says, wouldn't it be better to tie him by the collar? He says, well, then I wouldn't have a siren.